1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Hello, hello, 1, 2. We are from the hangar.
Okay. So we're live on you guys.
Cool.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you, Barb. We're live. We're live. So just casually, anytime you want to.
Okay.
Sure. We're live. Yeah, we're live.
Welcome inside the hangar, just outside the Kia training grounds. Gareth Wheeler and Eric Giacometti from Toronto FC social with you as we await Greg Vanney, Michael Bradley, and Jozy Altidore for their press conference ahead of Saturday's MLS Cup final. The media is assembled. I think most people are grabbing a bite. They've been complaining about the cold weather. It's so media, isn't it, Eric? Just people complaining about the cold weather, including the man next to me.
Myself included. I'm not used to this quite as cold as this, but it was a good day of training. It was good to get outside, but nice to be in the shelter of the hangar and getting ready for the press conference here.
See, for me, the weather is a non-factor on a number of levels. One, it was colder last year for the MLS Cup final. Two, it's not that windy out there. Today, it's around freezing. And just wait for Champions League football come February, Eric, and that's when really the complaining will truly start.
Yeah, especially when you get that wind whipping off the lake and curling down into BMO Field. But nothing the guys aren't used to, as you mentioned last year, was just as cold, if not colder. So I'm sure that won't faze them one bit.
So never mind the weather. The wait is almost over. Just 2 more sleeps. That's kind of how I count down to the MLS Cup final. The international media has rolled into town. It's starting to get that big event, big game feel, isn't it, Eric?
Absolutely. Just from being around the Kia training grounds every day, the difference in setup between a normal day in the summer as opposed to MLS Cup media is night and day. But it's a good thing. You kind of want that exposure, that experience of being around the big games, and it means that there's something big to play for. And these guys have been around it once before, so I think it's a good experience for them to learn from last year and use it this year as well.
Well, let's talk about how the week has gone, because it's been a full week since Toronto FC got past the Columbus Crew to make it back to MLS Cup final. The way that I'd kind of describe it, as loose, as comfortable. You said it. They've been there, done that before. I think this is a team that's very comfortable in their skin. In Toronto FC, from a mental and preparation perspective, I think they're right on point, exactly where they want to be.
Yeah, loose is a good word. Greg Vanney said the same thing yesterday, kind of keeping the training session a little bit more light. Obviously, there's a ton of pressure when it comes to games like these, winner take all for the MLS Cup, but you want to make sure that you're not hyper-focused and laser-focused for 5, 6, 7 days straight, because it's just not possible. You need a bit of a break. So these guys are definitely loose. They're enjoying the moment, and they're learning from last year as well.
There'll be more and different questions from the media today, obviously, with the head coach, Greg Vanney. He's been in front of the media, I think, all but one day. So he's answered just about everything there is to answer. Of course, there'll be more questions about Jozy Altidore and his health. He's going to be behind the podium. He was just in full training this morning as well, so good to see him back out with the guys in terms of a full training regimen. And then, of course, the captain, Michael Bradley, a go-to individual, just in terms of the overall perspective and his perspective and his story over the course of the year as well.
Yeah, obviously for Jozy and Michael, it's been a winding road, a lot of success here at the club level, international level. We all know about that story, but this is a great opportunity for the two of them especially to get back in front of this home crowd where they're loved so much, and you see how much they appreciate their contribution. So we know that come Saturday the fans will be behind them, and this will be a great way to cap off their year if they can get it done.
I think there's way more questions to be answered when it comes to Seattle than there is for Toronto FC. We basically know what the team's going to look like. Greg has a couple decisions to make, whether it's Jonathan Osorio or Marky Delgado, 2 very good candidates to play in the midfield position. I think everything else is kind of as is. But at Seattle, I think that they have more to answer to in terms of how they line up to deal with this Toronto FC team. There could be up to 5 changes in that Seattle team from last year's MLS Cup final.
Well, what interesting part to me is that you have a Seattle team that hasn't really played. They've been playing against 10 men for a lot of these playoffs. So we'll see how they counter the TFC lineup.
We're just moments away, as you hear. They're just testing the microphones right now, so we'll stick with you until Vanney, Altidore, and Bradley get to the stand. And that's the thing. It looks like Ozzy Alonso, you know, the inspirational leader, a player who was so good in last year's final. It would be a surprise if he starts. He's dealing with a quad. He's dealing with a knee. He's a player that, if you're the coaching staff of Seattle, you might want to bring him on. But that could be a significant loss. Yes, they do have good, very good defensive midfield players, but at the same time, how do you account for losing a player of Alonso's stature in the team?
He's been massive for Seattle since they've come into MLS. He's grown into stature. He's grown into importance on that team, wearing the captain's armband. So certainly a big miss for them in the heart of the midfield. But I do think they have, you know, some talented Christian Roldan, one of the talented players in the midfield, that they can kind of try to abate that miss. But certainly one that they'll be looking to use if they can off the bench.
Well, one of the big stories is, like, how is Seattle going to play? Because they do have attacking talent, but do come out and play Toronto FC as is? Like last year, they were very defensive, and they almost had to be with players like Freeberg and Valdez, maybe not the players of Bruins or Rodriguez or even a Clint Dempsey's ability. So it's going to be interesting to see if they actually come out and play Toronto FC straight up, or they take a more defensive approach, much like the Red Bulls and the Columbus Crew did over the past 2 legs.
Well, I was talking with Greg Vanney about just that. Both of these teams are much improved, I think, over last year, even though TFC only a couple tweaks, but you look at Chris Mavinga, Victor Vasquez, 2 major pieces, and Seattle, I think, has gotten stronger as well. So there's certainly going to be a bit of a chess match here. Do they come out and try to play toe-to-toe with TFC, who have been so good at home, only losing, once in the regular season, or do they try to, weigh things out and play a little bit more defensive and then try to hit on the counter, as we've seen teams do at BMO Field?
If I'm Seattle, I know that you have attacking talent, but you got to come out and play defensive. You're away from home. You're playing against the Toronto FC team with so much talent. For me, it would almost be crazy if they come out and play a more attacking 11 or more attacking formation. Don't they have to come out and try to strike on the counterattack and kind of follow the methods of others before?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if they open themselves up too quickly, that's a recipe for disaster for Seattle. We all know what TFC can do on the break, whether it's through their wide players like Steven Beitashour and Justin Morrow. We know from the left back position, scoring 8 goals, what he can do. So you don't want to open yourselves up too early. I think it makes sense for them to try to feel out the game, absorb a bit of that pressure, just maybe survive the first 20, 30 minutes, and then see what they can do on the counter and maybe push on some numbers later in the second half.
You were outside at training this morning. Obviously, Altidore is going to be asked the question, but from what you saw, how did he look?
He looks good. I mean, he said it immediately after, rolling his ankle in that Columbus series, that there's no way that he's going to be held out of this series, and you kind of have to believe. I mean, he's been fighting all year for an opportunity like this in a game where it's winner take all. Even when he was hobbled on one leg, he was able to prove the difference. So even if he's not 100%, you know what you're going to get out of Jozy Altidore, and he's certainly going to want the chance to be the difference maker on Saturday.
I've seen so many stories written or told about Toronto FC not scoring goals in the playoffs. Isn't that to do more with the style of play and the fact that also the schedule has made for lengthy absences? That's the one thing for me, with so much time off between games. It allows for a little bit of rust, or maybe not being your absolute sharpest, being on point with the rest of your team. To me, there's a difference in the players being fully fit and taking advantage of the rest, but then coming together in which every game is being the biggest game of the year. That's a difficult spot and a difficult situation for them. So I kind of blame the schedule more so than anything else, why the ball maybe hasn't been going in the back of the net as much as some people would like to see.
No, listen, this team has not forgotten how to score goals.
No.
It's the highest scoring offense in MLS. So we all know that they can find the back of the net. Yes, the playoffs are a different animal, and they require a different approach. I mean, we saw the way that they went into Red Bull Arena, got 2 goals. That means that they don't have to go out and chase the game at home. They don't have to go out and get those 1-2 goals. So yes, they won 2-2 on aggregate there, but that's all of the situation required. So for me, they've done what's been required in the series. They've survived in advance, and in the playoffs, that's all that matters.
It's maturity. I think it shows internal growth and an understanding of what needs to be done. Michael Bradley said it after the Columbus, after the 1-0 win over against Columbus in the second leg, that teams that oftentimes want to play with that flair come playoff time, they end up sitting at home on the couch watching an MLS Cup final. I think that's an astute observation. Look, they obviously want to put on a show, but it's not priority. It's results this time of year, and that's how they're going to be judged, Eric.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, when you want to sell your season tickets, yes, you want to play flashy football, attractive football.
They did it all year.
Absolutely, they did, and that's what sold out BMO Field so many times. But when it comes to this time of the year, winning is paramount. You have to do everything you can just to make sure you get through to the next round, get to MLS Cup. And look at last year; they ended up scoring something like 15 goals in the build-up to MLS Cup, and we all know how that one ended. So it's not about the form you have coming into the game; it's about doing what's needed on the day to make sure you get the result.
And I think you can take a lot of solace, a lot of confidence at the fact that this Toronto FC team improved all around. Obviously the best team in MLS history over the course of the regular season. Their attacking players and talent, that speaks for itself. But defensively, Eric, the second best team in MLS over the course of the year. During the regular season in 17 home games, only conceded 15 goals at home. Because there's a lot of hype right now about Seattle, having conceded in 6 straight games, but this Toronto FC team defensively has been able to do the job as well. Greg Vanney, Michael Bradley, Jozy Altidore are approaching the podium. Eric and I will be here after all is said and done with these three to break it down for you. Enjoy the press conference.
All right, so good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's 2017 MLS Cup Team Press Conferences. We're looking forward to the series of events this week that leads us into Saturday's MLS Cup, 4 p.m. Eastern on ESPN, Unimas, TSN, TVA Sports, and to 170 countries around the world. To kick us off today, we welcome Toronto FC head coach Greg Vanney, captain Michael Bradley, and forward Jozy Altidore. We're going to go straight into the Q&A, so please raise your hand. We'll get you a mic. Start right here. Please state your name and organization.
David Schultz, Globe and Mail in Toronto. Jozy, how's your ankle? Are you going to play?
Yeah, I'll play. It's good.
Jeff Carlisle with ESPN FC. My question's for Michael. Seattle's got a little bit of a different team than they had a year ago. In what ways are they going to challenge you that will be different from the game last year?
Yeah, obviously, Clint enters into the equation in a big way in terms of his ability to make goals and set up goals, to turn plays that seem like nothing into danger. Obviously, Ladero is a guy that we're going to have to collectively do a really good job on. His ability to float around the field and find space and find the ball is very good. Will Bruin has been a very important guy for them in this last stretch and has been in good form. And then we'll see how they complement those guys around them in terms of who's on the field and in what spots. But it's a very good team, and we'll have to collectively be at our best to make sure we can make things hard on them.
Jozy, Kelsey Braid, TSN. You'd said last Wednesday that nothing was going to take this game away from you. Is the ankle pain-free? Is it as close as it's going to get? Is it better than what you expected it was going to be at this point?
It doesn't matter.
Right, next question. Front row, Paula.
Chico Nashon, CBC Sports. Question for you, Jozy. Sloane Stephens' incredible story this year. She won the U.S. Open, come back from injury. How much has that kind of inspired yourself? Like, is there anything you can draw from her own career that you've kind of put that into your own?
A bit different sports, but how she was able to come back and recover and to step into a big tournament like the U.S. Open and really go after it says a lot about her character, and I'm proud of her. Everybody's proud of her, and hopefully she can kick on next year and do more of the same.
Steve Gennaro on Sports Talk. Jozy, Michael, for both of you, how does this game rank in terms of your career as far as big games that you've played? Where would you place it?
Never easy to rank. In general, the opportunity to play in a final is special, and is not something that comes around all the time. And so we've talked about that all week, which is just over the course of your career, to find teams and groups of guys where things are different and special. That's so unique, and we feel like we have that here. We feel so proud of what this year has been for us in terms of from day one, everything we've put into things. And we get our reward, or one of our rewards tomorrow, which is the opportunity to step on the field in our stadium, in our city, and play in a final, play for the chance to hold up a trophy. As competitors, you wanna play in the biggest games and the biggest moments when everything is on the line, and that's certainly the case tomorrow.
Ryan Tolmich, SBI. This is for Greg and Jozy. You look at Seattle's defense these last few weeks, and in the playoffs in particular, they've been pretty much near perfect, and they kind of defend from the front, the midfield, the defense. It's not just all the back line. You know, how do you guys kind of put yourselves in positions to kind of challenge that defense, and what are some of the things that you're going to look to try and get players like Jozy and Victor and Sebastian into, and to kind of get that space to kind of do what you guys need to do?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that collectively they're a good team. Defensively, everybody that they play is committed to the effort, to getting behind the ball, to making things difficult. Obviously, they have two big, strong center backs who take up a lot of space there in the back line, and the midfielders in front of them do a great job of protecting them. You know, when I watch the games, I feel like on some aspect, in order to win games, you've got to break your shape a little bit. You've got to make things difficult for the opposition, and you have to create some uncertainty for their back group and not make things so straightforward to them. And I feel like as I watched some of the Western Conference games against them, a lot of things were very straightforward against them, and they managed all those things very well. So for us is to try to make things difficult, get guys in areas that we think we can take advantage of, make sure we get our guys on the ball as much as we can, and execute when we get chances to execute. So again, good defensive team, but we think we can find some spots to create some problems for them.
He answered it.
Matt Pence for ESPN FC. My question's for Michael. You talked about the pride in playing for the city. How would you sort of describe the vibe and the atmosphere around Toronto this week, and how is it different, if at all, from last year leading up to this game?
In terms of differences, hard to tell. In general, this is a sports mad city. You know, it has a way of wrapping its arms around its teams and its athletes, and if you can embrace that, if you can understand that it's a privilege and a responsibility, that it won't always be easy and perfect, but you have character, you have personality, you're willing to, you know, you're willing to represent them and the city in the best possible way. It's incredible, and I think the relationship that our team has with our fans and with the city is incredible. It's so unique, and we're gonna draw on that in a big way tomorrow afternoon.
Raúl Guzmán, Univisión Deportes. Coach, what kind of game do you expect? As tight as the last year, or more open game?
Initially, I think the game will be relatively tight. I don't think, at the onset that either team wants to give away too much, but goals always determine and change games. And last year, neither team could quite get the edge on the other to force them to come out and really expose themselves to chase the game a little bit. So ultimately, goals will dictate sort of how open this game gets, but I think it'll be cagey at first, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Franco Panizo for Jozy and Michael. Last year, you guys always had a big opportunity, and then they beat you on penalty kicks. What was the feeling like when they were here celebrating on your field and you guys weren't able to close it out? And how much of that feeling lingers or remains going into this game, another championship game against the same team at home?
It was not great. So it's good that we have a chance to hopefully reverse that feeling on Saturday.
Sam Stejskal with MLSsoccer.com. This one's for Michael. There's been a lot of talk this week about these two teams kind of being model clubs in MLS, both on and off the field in terms of everything that they do. Do you buy into that? And if so, do you think it kind of heightens anything in terms of the moment or meaning on Saturday?
What was the first part of your question? I'm sorry.
If you buy into the thought that these are two of the model teams in MLS.
I do. Obviously, I've not been on the inside of things in Seattle, but everything you hear is that similar to our club. They try to do things at a high level and in the best possible way. And I think for the league to have more and more clubs that are willing to spend in different areas, willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that on and off the field things are done at the highest level. That's how the league gets moved forward, and ultimately that's what we all want. And I think it's even more exciting when you have another season where the two teams standing at the end are two of those types of clubs, because I think it encourages, I think it justifies everything that is being done, and I think it encourages everybody else to try to do the same, to try to keep pace. And so I think, ultimately in a league, you're never going to have every team that is going to go about it the same way. You wouldn't want that. But I do think it's a very positive thing that teams that are bold and not afraid to go for things in a big way are getting rewarded.
Thank you. Go ahead.
This one's for Michael, Kelsey Braid, TSN. You guys had the orange snowball out at practice today. Last year it was cold during MLS Cup. The fact that there could be some snowfall this year, just what type of conditions are you guys preparing for?
It's going to be cold. It's Toronto, right? It's Toronto in December, and so I don't think nobody thought any different. At least for me, and we've not spent a whole lot of time talking about it or worrying about it, because ultimately it's one of those things that gets filed away under things that we have no control over. In the end, you just hope that the game isn't affected by the temperature. I think we all felt like at the end last year, it was bitter. It was bitter and dry, and it made for a difficult night in a lot of ways. I think tomorrow or Saturday, I think the temperature should be a little closer to zero. Chance of some snow falling on a heated field hopefully keeps the field slick, and I think I think the conditions actually set up for a good game.
Thomas Floyd, Goal.com. Greg, obviously the MLS Cup title would speak for itself, but how much would it mean to become the first MLS team to win 3 titles in the same season?
It's been something we've talked about at the beginning of the year, but it's, as we talked about that, we always talk about what does it take to actually do those things, and what does that process look like, and are we all committed to the daily work that it takes to do those types of things. So while we know it's there, again, we don't really talk about that anymore. It was something we set up at the beginning of the year. What we talk about now is what do we need to do tomorrow with every possible play that we need to make? How do we set ourselves up with the best chance to win? And obviously, as the game progresses tomorrow, we'll have to make adjustments, decisions, all those kinds of things. And if we do a better job than Seattle, then the outcome will take care of itself. And if we get to that point, then we'll talk about what all of that means. But tomorrow for us is really about a process of trying to win the game. I'm sorry, not tomorrow, Saturday. A process about trying to win the game on Saturday, and the rest is, will be history after that.
In the back.
Hi, David Goss, MLS. Greg, when you look at this Seattle team, Dempsey and Jovan Jones higher up the field this year, you're a team that likes to sometimes get in transition to try and create chances. They can be pretty lethal that way with Lodero. How do you find that balance?
Well, first you deal with transition by being good with the ball. When we have possessions, it's making sure that we are responsible with our possessions. We make good passes, we make good choices. Secondary is that we always have good cover behind our attacks, and making sure that we're taking care of the guys that they have who sometimes half defend, half get ready to take off in transition, and making sure we're accountable to all those things. And then, ultimately you have to hurt teams who have players who kind of do that. And if you can hurt them and create chances, it forces them to have to respect the defending side just a little bit more. And when they do that, then they lose some of those attacking positions that they like to take up in terms of transition. So, but we know they're capable both in possession and in transition. Any team that gets to this point has to be good in both sides of attack that way. We just need to be, smart about how we go about business and try to hurt them in the moments where we have the opportunity to hurt them.
Right here.
This one's for Greg. Justin Morrow is a guy who this year really took a big leap, and it was probably his best ever year. As a player, how did he kind of progress this year, especially within this system and against this Seattle team? What are some of the things that he's going to be able to do to help in both attacking and kind of defending a team that can counter like that?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, Justin has an incredible engine to get up and down the side and to be able to be in attack in one play and in the very next play be in the back helping out our guys defensively. I mean, he's an incredible engine to run the side like that. Justin's, I think, his emergence over the last couple of years is just because he's become more and more aggressive on the attacking side. He's always been a competent, solid defender. And the more aggressive he's gotten on the attacking side, the more problems he's created. He takes advantage of what our guys up front and the guys on the right side are able to do. He finds his way into the box, and you can't. It's very difficult to account for a right back or left back or a left wing back who's arriving into the box when you're dealing with everything else. So, again, for him tomorrow is to remain aggressive, keep doing the things that he's been doing. It doesn't change because it's a final. It's we want to see Justin do all the things that he's been able to accomplish this year on the biggest stage tomorrow, or on Saturday. I keep saying tomorrow, but Saturday.
James Sharman, Sportsnet. Michael, is the word revenge something that we use in the media, or is it something you guys are using in the room as well?
Ultimately, it's down to each guy in terms of what they, their perspective on things. For me, revenge is not really part of it. It's Seattle again. I think we're all excited it's Seattle again, but for me, the way I look at things, this is about our group of guys, our club, this city, the road that we have all taken to get here, what it meant after the disappointment and the heartbreak of last year to have to live each and every day this year, knowing that in the back of our minds, this was all we wanted, to give ourselves another crack. And so, like I said, it's in my mind, this is about us. This is about us stepping on the field tomorrow on Saturday, and going for it. And even in the biggest game, having a group of guys who, in a fearless, aggressive way, are ready to go after things. And that's what we have done every single time we've played this year, whether it's been home or away, regardless of who we've played against. We have stepped on the field trying to be aggressive, trying to go for it, and trying to win. And we're going to do that one more time and see where that leaves us.
Great. Any other questions? We'll go to the back.
Thanks, Coach, for Coach Vanney. I just wonder whether you could comment on your Seattle counterpart, whether you think Brian has afforded the national recognition he deserves based on his achievements with that team.
It's tough to say, honestly, because I don't, as fellow reporters here know, I don't read a lot of stuff, and so I don't follow a lot of how much people are talking about one thing or another, so I don't have an opinion on that. What I would say is he's done a phenomenal job since he's taken over as the head coach. He's obviously been able to get that group of guys to really compete and on some great runs last year to get to the final and accomplish what they have been able to accomplish. They turned around this year and had a solid season and are right back in the final again. So, kudos to him. He's done a great job with his group. He really knows that team. He knows those players well, and he's able to get a lot out of them. And so, how much recognition he gets, I'm not quite sure, but I think he deserves, obviously, credit for what he's been able to accomplish, that's for sure.
All right, we'll do the front right here to wrap it up.
James Grassi, MLSsoccer.com. For Michael and Jozy, Last week, Greg was speaking about seeing an evolution in Sebastian Giovinco's game over the time that he's been here. What have you guys seen in terms of how he's evolved as a player?
I think he has, with every day, understands more and more our team, the league, and everything that it takes to continue to be successful. You know, I saw a few comments Greg made earlier in the week, which was, you know, in a lot of ways when he first arrived, I don't think he knew a ton about the league. The league didn't know a ton about him. He very early on said, I need to play as close to the, you know, I'm best as close to the goal as possible because, you know, my best quality is still how I can score goals. And we all see that week in and week out in terms of his ability to score goals in so many different ways. And I think the thing that has improved, and it's not even that it's improved because his quality he's always had this quality, but in his recognition of how much he can help our team in other ways in terms of finding the moments to come back into the midfield and get balls in those spots, how to drift off the center backs a little bit so he's able to take certain balls and face forward and run at them. And so it's been a two-way street, you know, for the last few years in terms of him learning about the league and understanding us and us doing the same for him. And I think, you know, we're all very honest with ourselves and also understand that as we continue to grow and improve and as we continue to try to push the envelope, there's always the need to continue to tweak things to make sure that we evolve and grow in the right ways. And I think, you know, his mentality, his humility for the way that he's, you know, ready to do whatever it takes to help the team is huge. And so we're going to continue to build on all of that together.
All right. So with that, we'll wrap up this portion. We thank Toronto FC for your participation and best to you the rest of the week.
Thank you.
The Seattle Sounders portion of the press conference will begin approximately 2:05 p.m.
So that was head coach Greg Vanney, Jozy Altidore, and Michael Bradley. Gareth Wheeler, Eric Giacometti from Toronto FC Social back with you. Jozy, straight to the point. A man of very few words today. I guess he just wants to let his play do the talking, not go too deep into it. That indicates for me, Eric, sure, he's not 100%, but oftentimes in cup finals, players aren't 100%, but he's going to be out there Saturday giving it his absolute all.
Yeah, there's no question, and as I mentioned before, he said it right after the Columbus series. He just said it very plainly there in the press conference. He is playing, and Greg Vanney even mentioned it yesterday, speaking to the media, that a lot of times when you have these nagging injuries, sometimes you say, well, if it was the playoff time, we'd force him, but we're going to hold him off now. Well, guess what? Nothing left to play for except for MLS Cup, so you better believe he's going to be on the field.
And the thing is, knowing Jozy, I just don't think that he wants to go out and make excuses. He just wants to go out there and play. And that's what I think that him being short means more than anything else. It's not because he's being standoffish or anything like that. He's like, no need to go out and put in built-in excuses. I'm going to be out there, and it's just all about winning at this point.
Yeah, he's a grinder. We've seen that throughout his career. And at this point, I think all of the guys, they're just ready to play. They've done with the talking. It's been you know, a week of build-up. The media circus is in town, and listen, that's all a big part of it. But they're ready to just hit the field and get going with this thing. So you can see the anticipation there. He's just ready to get on the field and show what he can do.
There's really not much more to say, really. The guys have all spoken over the course of the week. They've dealt with all the issues. Their preparation's been on point. I just love the continued sentiments from Michael Bradley about him being in this with the fans, with the city, with his teammates, with the staff. Everyone is pulling in the same direction. I think that's the sentiment that's going to kind of take over BMO Field and has been a big-time turning point this season from last, where, quite frankly, they struggled at times at home. This season's been a completely different story, 13-3-1 over the course of the regular season, because there really is that sense of community, isn't there?
Yeah, you've seen it, especially when you look at the record, more than anything else. They turned those ties that they were, in 2016 into wins, and that's where they built that Supporters Shield run was here at BMO Field. And speaking of Michael Bradley, I haven't really seen too many players take to a city the way that Michael Bradley has. It's not just a place for him to play soccer. This is his home. He really feels a part of the city, and the city has embraced him right back. And you can tell how much it means to him, the opportunity to get back here in MLS Cup in front of the home fans and try to make good on last year's disappointment and get it done here at BMO Field.
Was anything else that was said? Did anything stand out to you, Eric?
Not too much. I mean, like you said, this is kind of more of the same. We know what kind of approach these guys are going to take. Very businesslike, very tactful. Like I said, the guys they're ready to get down to the brass tacks of it. Whether or not we see changes come game day, that remains to be seen. But in terms of preparedness, these guys are raring to go, and you can tell that just from the press conference today.
Michael spoke about how bitterly cold it was by the end of the game. Well, when you play 120 minutes and it was a later kickoff, I mean, the kickoff's at between 4 and 4:30 on Saturday. That'll make somewhat of a difference. So the bitter cold that you felt a year ago, it'll be a different type of cold. So, and I love how he said, like, it's not going to play a role. Like, the pitch is going to be good, everything's going to be on point, and it's one of those things that you can't control, and both teams need to deal with it. It's not as if it's going to be a liability to one, not the other.
That's just it. I mean, there's only so much talking you can do about the weather. It's out of your control. Both sides are going to have to deal with it, as you said. The only thing I do think is it might, hinder both sides would be the wind, and I think that's a lot of things. Stephen Badishore, Justin Moore, they all said the same thing, that the wind is really more so than the cold is what can affect the game. So you just hope that it's not going to be too much of a whirlwind around BMO Field. They can try to keep the ball on the ground, play smart, simple soccer, attractive soccer, and hopefully get some goals this time around.
The one thing more than anything else that just sticks with me is this is exactly where they want to be. And it's a cup final, yes, but there's home field advantage as well. They're in their own backyard, friends and family, their community around them. If you could script it to this point, Toronto FC has kind of executed every step of the way. There's just one more game. The finish line is in sight, and I think the group is completely confident. You see the confidence in them. They're not rattled. They're not thrown off. It's a very business-like approach, and that's what you like to see heading into a final.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about being able to sleep in your own bed, being able to go through your normal routine. That a lot of fans might not think about it, but Seattle does have to get on that plane, and they got into the hotel late last night, had to do media. All of that is kind of a little bit different than what they're used to. Whereas TFC at home, they get to go through their normal routines. Everything is status quo, and that certainly helps in the build-up to a big game like this to try to keep everything as steady as possible, keep things as normal as possible.
Let's tell you about the routine, what's coming up over the next couple days. Tonight, everyone can get a good night's sleep. Tomorrow morning, bright and early, the two teams will be training down at BMO Field. We will be down there for Toronto FC training, a late morning, early afternoon, so keep it locked to torontofc.ca, at Toronto FC on Twitter. Saturday, obviously, the big day, Eric. If you don't have tickets, it's a sold-out game, obviously, at BMO Field. A viewing party, 3 big screens, heaters, delicious Budweiser, all that going on outside local in Liberty Village, right at the corner of East Liberty and Atlantic. TSN 1050 Radio is going to be broadcasting live throughout the afternoon there. It's going to be a party. It's going to be a scene. I hear there might be some ticket giveaways as well if you show up. So this is how you want to go watch a cup final. Like, I know always watching like World Cup finals, it's always better in an open square amongst peers and a community. You don't want to be sitting at home watching. You want to be in Liberty Village, embracing the Canadian elements and partying with your fellow Reds.
No, that's the next best thing to being at BMO Field. If you can't get tickets, or if you haven't got tickets, head on down to the viewing party where you're going to be surrounded by plenty of fans. You got the heaters as well, so don't fret. The elements won't be too bad. So the next best thing to getting to BMO Field, to head on down and support with your local fans.
Plenty of content up at torontofc.ca as well. We have match previews. Eric has been hard at work, doing some great work there. Interviews. Come On You Reds podcast. A fresh one will be coming out on Friday as well. Am I missing anything? Oh yeah, get complete match day coverage as well. I'm probably missing something.
No, we've got everything. Just head over to TorontoFC.ca. We got you on Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, just about everywhere you can find us. We're going to have coverage leading up to the game and, of course, on Saturday. Follow us on all of our channels. You'll get all the behind-the-scenes access for MLS Cup 2017.
We'll be busy so you don't have to be, so you can kick back, relax, and enjoy. Just 2 more sleeps to the MLS Cup final. At Eric_Giacometti on Twitter, at Toronto FC. Use the hashtag TFC Live. On behalf of Eric, Renata, Sean, Armando, and everyone here, thanks for tuning in to the live stream. I am Gareth Wheeler, and come on, you Reds.